from, and I am trying to fix this. This view is awful. Trying to get it right. I am here to do a book talk on Kingdom of Souls by Rena Barron, and this is a book that I received in several different formats before it came out last month. So I received an e-arc of it randomly from the publisher. Then I got a promotional box with this copy in it, and then I got sent another finished copy. So I have like 3 copies of this book. So if you guys didn't know, Kingdom of Souls is a debut YA fantasy inspired by North or West African, I was going to say North African. There's another book that I'm reading that's inspired by North African elements, but this one is West African, and it is about a young lady by the name of Aura, and Aura is part of this community in which there are different groups of witch doctors, and these different witch doctors all have different powers, and she is born to one of the most powerful ones, but Aura doesn't have magic. She's supposed to come into her magic by a certain age, and she still hasn't come into her magic, and she can't figure out why she hasn't come into her magic. And her grandmother, who is the chief of or the clan leader of as a witch doctor, one of the most powerful ones, keeps trying to help her come into her magic, and she's not coming into her magic, and she can't figure out why. So then what ends up happening is that somebody starts stealing children, and she wants to help figure out why these children are being stolen, and she decides to do something that her family and everybody knows not to do, and that's to sell her years for magic. So essentially you're selling part of your life to have magic to be able to do stuff, and you don't know how much of your life you're selling until the job is actually done. So she decides to make that fatal move of selling her years for magic so she can help these kids and figure out what's going on. I change that again. If you don't want to be spoiled for anything that happens in this book, if you have not read this book, I definitely would recommend not watching past this point, because it's kind of hard to discuss this book without spoiling any of it. And I'm probably will go back and do a non-spoiler review for those of you who want to see a non-spoiler review, but I need to talk about certain elements of this book that are spoilery, so that's pretty much it. If you want to know more, I will have a full written review by the time that this video goes up, so you can check that review. That'll be a non-spoiler review. Check that out in the description box, link below. Okay, so for those of you who have stayed and have decided to watch the spoilery part of this video, I truly enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this book because there were so many different elements of it that were amazing. I did not think that this book was going to go in the direction it goes in. So she ends up selling her years to figure out who's taking these kids. And when I came to the realization that it was her mother who was doing it, the story took on a completely different vibe. So I feel like this is almost 2 stories in one, because the first half of this book does a lot of world building, and the world is not as clear as it should be. I was talking to someone else about this on my channel who left a comment saying that they weren't too sure about the world building, and I kind of understand that. It's kind of confusing understanding who the different witch doctor tribes are. And my copy, I don't know if anybody else's copy possibly has this, but my copy doesn't have it doesn't have any maps in it, but I did find a map on her website, but there was no maps in the book. So I don't know if there are copies that do have maps in them and copies that don't, but that kind of helped. But there wasn't a lot of clear explanation related to all of the witch doctor tribes, so it makes things a little bit more confusing. So you get introduced to the witch doctors. You find out that Aura just doesn't have any magic. She can't have any magic. Her grandmother keeps trying to help her with magic, and it's just not happening. It's just not there. And they have this one meeting, and all of a sudden her grandmother has this full-blown vision, and they feel like the Demon King is coming back. And then that's when things kind of change a little bit. I will admit that in between the first part and the second part, the part in between those two was kind of slow, and I was like, dang, like what is going on? Like this is dragging a little bit. But it does pick up, and it picks up quickly, especially when you find out that her mom is like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like her mom is the one who's selling these kids souls, and you know, it's almost like it's payback for a broken heart. And I thought that was crazy that her mother was doing all of this because and I almost can't remember the guy's name, because you know, what would I be in a book talk prepared for anything. But Ara's love interest's father, I can't remember his title, but he did some really cuckoo crazy stuff to Arya's mother, and now everybody wants to do like this revenge type thing. So her mother takes all these souls, and she basically sells the souls to have a child that's part demon and part god. And it's weird. But what I liked about it was that, like, by the time, you know, her mother does all this and they have to flee because they run into some issues, by the time they get to that other town that has no concept of time, her mother was like, oh shoot, she regrets everything, and by that time it's too late. Like, I can't believe I made the decision to have a child that's part demon, part god. And I was like, well, of course, if you have a child that's part demon, part god, of course there's going to be issues, because the child ends up being just awful. She's awful. I don't even understand. It was just weird. It was super, super weird. One other part of this book that was quite confusing to me was that there are parts of this, like language-wise, that she didn't provide a glossary for in my copy. So like she uses terms like ka, she uses terms like osana, and they're not ever explained because there's no god. I mean, there's no key terms in this book anywhere. So if y'all have a finished copy that has key terms in it, let me know. But this copy doesn't have any key terms in it. But once again, I did find it on her website, so that kind of helped with this. And I also like that this book had the perspective of the gods. So there are two different groups. So the witch doctors live separately from the city that Ara lives in, and then the city that Ara lives in, they worship the Orishas, which are the same gods and goddesses that are in Children of Blood and Bone. But then there is a god that is not part of the Orishas that are that is celebrated by the witch doctors, and that's where things I think can get a little confusing for any reader, because it's like they're not the same group, they're different. So I would make sure that you keep that in mind whenever you are reading this. One of the things that I didn't like about this book was the romance. I didn't think the romance was needed. The romance between her and the lead guy was just unnecessary. The two of them can't even be together technically, because their magics are polar opposites, because she comes from a tribe and she has the power of all the witch doctors at the end of the book. They can't work, so it was weird. And then there was this moment where he quote unquote accidentally slept with her sister. That was weird too. I don't understand how he made that mistake. That was just very, very awkward, and I don't know why that one was even put in there. I want a YA fantasy with no romance, honestly. Like, there doesn't need to be romance. I think this could have been done without romance. But I think the best part of this book was the end. When you find out that old girl was actually a goddess, She's an Orisha goddess herself, reincarnated, and she had a love affair with the Demon King. And now I'm thinking that in this second book, whenever it does come out, it's going to deal with the fact that he's going to try to bring out it's going to be two polarizing individuals in one body. So it's going to be Aura in one body and then the goddess also in that same body, because she doesn't understand. She doesn't know. So I think part of her is going to think that she needs to fight the Demon King, and then part of her is going to think that, oh shoot, well, actually I'm the one that kind of helped create the Demon King. So that is it's just, oh gosh, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. The deaths of her parents was really sad. I know she had a good relationship with her dad. Her mom wanted her to have a, for them to have a good relationship, but that came like a little too late after her mom basically was just completely horrible to her, because she didn't have her magic. But then when she realized that, holy crap, I've created an evil child, and I didn't realize I was going to create an evil child. I just want my original child back. I thought it was just a little too late for that as well. But I did think that the world is so huge and complex that I really do think that the author does need to go back and explain a little bit more of it. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more explaining about the gods, because there are so many different elements of the gods here. It's not just Orishas that are a part of it. There are more gods, and I kind of got that when I did go through it. When I went through it and I annotated, I used the pink tabs for like cultural references, and a lot of that was stuff that needed to be delved into further, and people won't know unless they actually read the book. So actually what I'm going to do is, because I know when I did talk about this in my wrap up, I said I would go through and explain some of the actual annotations. So I'm going to go through with another clip, insert a clip here, so you guys can kind of see some of the annotations that I'm talking about. Okay, so these are the annotations that I did for this book. The pink is historical, cultural, yellow is God's perspective, plot development, character development, and then beautifully intriguing passages. So what you'll see here is how I annotated is that a lot of this stuff here, like this is what I was talking about with the pink bar marked it, because there was no key. I didn't know what some things were, and I made this a reference to the first time I'd heard Orisha was when I read Children of Blood and Bone, and I went through, and a lot of this stuff, like I said, dealt with the plot, but a lot of this changed coming into this back area where I did a little bit more, I don't know if I did a little bit more in-depth annotating back here. Yeah, so it got a little bit more intense when I got back here, because things were picking up so much, and we learned a lot about the different elements that her mom had pretty much been involved in, and then the gods' perspectives were really intriguing too. So they provided a lot of insight to the story, because it's almost like they were watching things happen, and that while they were watching things happen, they were giving their insight to it. And I guess some people could say that it was a little bit too much of the characters' involvement going on there, but I think it involved a unique and great perspective. So typically, like I said, this is just kind of a flip through of my annotations, not necessarily an explanation of each annotation, but this is how I typically annotate my books. If you guys want to see a flip through of my annotations, I will do that. Maybe not for this book because there's so many, but maybe for another book. But once I found that key, I was able to better explain some things in this book that weren't explained very well. Because some stuff wasn't explained very well, and I think that's because she didn't include a key at all. And I wish that she did. Like I said, I don't know if the finished copies have them, but I know that my copy here didn't have a key in it at all. But like I looked stuff up, like that word right there, I looked up under the key, and that's exactly what it ended up meaning. So yeah, but that is my annotated copy of it, which a lot of people say they like seeing the tabs of it, but yep, it's the annotations. Alright y'all, so that is it. I probably should have my thoughts better put together, but I thought it was an amazing book. Like I said, I don't think the romance was needed. I think that her world building could have been a little bit more clear. So hopefully she does that in the next book, and we get a little bit more insight to exactly what's going on. As always, if you guys like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, click the subscribe button, and I will be back with another video soon. If you're interested in following me on social media, all links will be down in the description box. If you want a better explained insight to my thoughts, check out that review that's going to be linked down in the description box. I think that'll give you better insight. But as always, I hope you guys have a wonderful day.